Japan's economy shrank 1.8% annualized in Q3 2025, its first decline in 6 quarters. GDP fell 0.4% from the previous quarter, driven by persistent inflation, weak consumer spending, and US tariffs.
だから、一部の
Japan's economic condition is far from optimistic. Conditions for low-income groups are worsening. Directing public dissatisfaction towards external issues is the simplest way to manage it.
Exports fell 1.2% and imports dipped 0.1%, cutting GDP by 0.2 points, half the total decline. Private consumption rose 0.1%, while corporate investment grew 1%. Japan's auto sector, hit by US tariffs, lost around $10 billion in H1 2025, with all major car makers reporting profit drops. Despite these concerns, Prime Minister Takaichi took a firm stand that Japan would defend Taiwan if attacked, a statement that has a major economic impact on Sino-Japanese trade ties.
They're going to go to a flexible multi-year budget, but there's really nothing new in there, just increasing wages and saying that she's going to pursue strategic interests. This is a country that has a 20% exposure to China in terms of its trade. It would be devastating.
Her comments, made in mid-November, disrupted a fragile balance in China-Japan relations, which are shaped by deep historical tensions and economic interdependence. China's restrictions and travel advisory will lead to a projected $9 billion loss in tourism revenue over the next year. But it also could impact Japanese trade ties with Taiwan.
It is interpreted as a recognition that Taiwan and Japan share a common destiny, that Japan is stepping closer to defending Taiwan, and that there is a symbolic alignment of Taiwan's own position with Japan's plan to quote-unquote normalize its country. For this camp, Takaichi's stance appears to validate the idea that Taiwan is part of a Japan-centered regional community, not in the past, but also in present.
The Japanese government is balancing national security rhetoric with economic pragmatism, aiming to preserve trade and investment flows from China. Takaichi's administration is also preparing a large stimulus package to counteract the economic slowdown and mitigate the impact of reduced Chinese engagement. The Economic Brief, DD India.
Well, Dr. Charan Singh continues to be with us. Dr. Charan Singh, can Japan afford to lose so much in the form of business from China and the United States?
I'm really worried about Japan. Japan was a very progressive country, and if you look at the way it was rising up in the 70s and 80s, it was almost about to overtake America. The Louvre Accord and the other accords which the Americans did along with the Europeans led to one lost decade, second lost decade in Japan. I really pity Japan. 40% of its population today is above 60 years. That means the fight back mechanism is not going to be there in Japan at all. So Japan economy is now really on a downswing. The tariffs have hit it very hard. And and your report also mentioned it, what happened to the exports. Well, Japan initially, before the tariffs were about to hit it, exported substantially so that they escaped the tariff war. Well, one of the reasons that you find the negative growth, and when you say 1.8% annualized, to some extent it is little less than the 2.5% or 2.3% that was projected and predicted by many economists. To that extent, it is a little moderate. Now, my feeling is that they will bounce back. The problem in the Japanese economy is consumption. As I've mentioned, that 40% of the population is above 60 years. Raising consumption, sustaining consumption, maintaining consumption is a real challenge up there in Japan. Right. But I think the new Prime Minister is coming out with various strategies. Okay. One of the important things that I think we need to learn is the interest rate. Should the Bank of Japan now do something with the interest rate? Firstly, it should not raise it. That was expected before this data came in, that they may raise it. So that is one thing. The other is one has to be very careful in what you choose and with whom you set up your relationship.
Yes.
Now, the problem with Japan is that it's a highly export oriented country.
Yes.
Now, this is something which we in India learned very fast. We went into Make in India, we went into Global Story, and we are taking care of the domestic production, domestic consumption. Of course, China has that challenge too, but I think the lesson that has to be learned from Japan, how much of export dependence should you have? And I think the lesson for all of us is that in the changed economic environment, in the
Yes.
changed geopolitics, in the highly uncertain global environment, you have to be inward looking, or
Okay.
call it reversal of globalization, or call it protectionism. But
Right.
there has to be within the country, you have to create demand and you have to have policies that are sustainable within the country.
We'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much, Dr. Charan Singh, Chief Executive of eGrow Foundation. Thank you for joining us and helping us understand these stories in greater detail.